In your journey of becoming a web developer, the best developer that you can be, you have stumbled across Leetcode, and everybody recommended you do some couple of questions on Leetcode as you're preparing for your interview. And one of those questions that pop up is just creating a stack using the first input, first output stack approach in a queue. And you're wondering, how can you solve this with JavaScript? I'm gonna cut straight to the chase. How you can solve this is by creating an empty array using the array method push and shift basically. And that's how you're going to go ahead and add elements to the array, your queue, and also remove elements from the array, your queue. Not quite sure how to do it? I recommend then sticking around and following this tutorial. So as you can see, what I do currently have open over here, what I do currently have, why did I just say that? So as you can see, I have my Visual Studio Code open, and over here I have an example running for you. So if I click on this, as you guys can see, it gives me the numbers to state exactly when that block was added to the queue, and as soon as it fills in, it removes them according to the way they were added. So basically the first one in is the first one out, which is the challenge that you want to solve with this queue. And if we go ahead and do like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, it should remove them in that order because that's how they came into the queue. So how you're going to think of this approach is basically, if you go to a bank and you're standing in a line, right? The guy who entered the bank last can't be helped first. It's unfair to everybody who's been there before them. So they always help the first customer. They always help the one who's first in line. And that's basically what we need to create here using JavaScript. So what I'm going to do in my Visual Studio Code, I'm just going to go ahead and create a file. I'm going to call this file index.html. I'm going to do exclamation mark enter, which is going to give me this HTML doc over here. And this I'm just going to rename to Leetcode queue. I didn't know what to make the title. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to paste the CSS over here and I'm going to run it through you. But I didn't want to go ahead and paste this because I wanted to focus more on the JavaScript side of this application. So before we had a look at that, let's quickly create the elements in this. So I'm going to do a dot container. So this container will basically be the holder of this entire section that you see over here. And then inside of this container, which is this container over here, I have 9 blocks. So I need to go create those 9 divs. And now I can do that with Emmet is just say dot block, which is the class I gave them, times 9, hit enter. They are my 9 divs. So the only thing is still missing is this h1 tag and this paragraph tag. Let me go ahead and add that. So I can say h1, and I'm just going to copy this because I'm kind of lazy to retype it. So I'm going to paste it there, and I'm going to do p tag. And as I've said before, we're not focusing on the styling on this, but more on the JavaScript. We want to get to the JavaScript. So here, just to make this a different color, I'm just going to wrap this in a span. Let me just do that and cut the end span, so we close it over there. And then let's quickly have a look at our CSS. The right on top of here, I'm just pulling in a Google font. I'm using the font Poppins because I like it. You don't have to. And then in my body tag, I'm pulling in that font. I'm doing a display flex, align item center, justify content center, flex direction column. If you're not sure what all of that does, let me know right now in the comment, and a flex CSS tutorial / video would be next on my list to do for you guys. But what this will do is just center align everything inside of my body tag, and I'm giving my body tag a min height of 90 view instead of 100. I've noticed it when I do 100, it gives like a scroll bar, and I don't like the scroll bar. And I just give it a background color. In my h1 tag, I just remove the margin, and then I have this h1 span, which is this color over here. Got this paragraph, which is just the color, font size, font weight, text align center, margin top 0. And then I have the container. So the container I'm just going to run through real quickly. I do a display grid. So instead of doing display flex, I do a display grid. And I do is grid template column. So the amount of columns I want to do is 3. And the width of those 3 columns should be each one 20 pixels. This is what this repeat does. The same goes with the rows. I'm saying create for me 3 rows, and each height basically after the row is going to be 120 pixel. And that gives me this perfect squares that you guys can see over here. And then I just style my blocks as well with the display flex, align item center, justify content center, each one of them a border, and then I have this class over here, which is the class that gets applied when selected. So if I click over there, which is this class that gets applied, just to highlight, to give like visual feedback as to what's happening with the stack or with the queue. But what I want to bring to attention is this CSS over here, which is pointer events. And basically what this does is this prevents me from clicking on an element that has this class. So instead of doing it with JavaScript, I can actually go ahead and do that with CSS, which makes life so much easier. So let's get to the fun part, which is the JavaScript part. Just going to scroll down right there. My queue, my stack is going to be an array. So let me just go ahead and create that. So I'm going to say const queue an empty array. And then what I want to do, I want to grab all of these blocks from the document. And how I'm going to do that, I'm going to say const blocks is equal to document dot query selector all, and select all elements that have the block class in it. Okay, and what I want to do is, instead of getting a node list, because this is going to return me a node list, just to show you guys, console.log blocks. Sorry, I'm going to save this, and then I'm just going to run this locally. So if you're not quite sure how I'm doing this, I'm using an extension called Live Server in Visual Studio Code. I just want to show you guys. So I'm using this extension called Live Server, which allows me to quickly open up the documents on like a local server. That's like a local server for HTML files. Just close that. So this is the one that I've just added. This is the one that we've been copying, so I can go ahead and close that one. And as you guys can see, I took console.log blocks. I'm going to do F12 over here, and you will see that I have a node list of 9 blocks. But I don't want a node list. I actually want an array of all of these. So how I can convert that into array is to do just that. I can just say array.from. It says create an array from an array like object, and that node list is basically an array like object. So if I save this now, and let's do F12, you can see I actually have an array with 9 elements, and that's what I wanted to do. So now that I have all of this, I want to add an event listener to each of these blocks, right? So I can go ahead and do that by saying blocks dot for each. So for each of these blocks, I can say select the individual block. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to say block dot add an event listener, and the event I want to listen to is when someone click on the block. I want to run this function. So whenever someone clicks on the block, the first thing I'm going to do, I want to add a CSS class to it, which is that selected CSS class, and I'm just going to add like a number to show when was it clicked, like is the first, is second, is third, is the third. You can think of this as a ticketing system. Basically, if you walk into a bank, let's do the bank one again. So if you walk into a bank, you get a ticket to say you are ticket number 38, for instance. So that will show. So visually, I want to show that this guy grabbed ticket number 2, this guy grabbed ticket number 3, etc. So how I'm going to go do that, I'm going to first do the block, which is the individual block, and I'm going to say class list dot add, and the class that I'm adding is called selected. Save this, and let's see. So if I click on this one, as you guys can see, it's adding that class, right? And then what I want to do is say block dot inner HTML, which is the basically ticketing system in HTML. And what I'm going to do for that in HTML, I can do queues dot length. Okay, I'm going to save this, and now if I click on this, you'll see it says 0, it says 0, says 0, because I'm not pushing this to the queue as of yet. So I need to go ahead and do that. So I can go and say queues dot push, which is basically adding this element to the array, but pushing it adds it at the end of the array, right? Not unshift, which adds it in the front of the array. And this is basically what we want. So I'm adding that to the array. Now I can go ahead and say click 0, 1, 2, 3, but nobody actually counts from 0. We actually want to count from 1, right? Imagine you get a ticket saying your number is 0. You'll be so mad. Let's just move that right up. So we're first going to push it, and then we're going to do our selected. We're going to add our class, and we're going to do it in HTML. So let's save that. And now it kind of counts like a human from 1 instead of counting from 0. And that's basically it. So now we can say we have added this 9 blocks inside our queues array, which is our stack, and we want to implement the first in, first out. So we've done the first in, which we determined which one is first in. We just need to go to the first out to pop that one out, right? And how we can do this, we're going to have to do it inside here by doing an if statement. So let's do if, and I'm going to do queues.length. So I just want to check if all of this 9 has been selected. If queues.length is equal to 9, which means that I need to pop, well, I need to remove the elements from this array, like from the first one, from the front and not from the back. And I'm going to do that by doing a function which is called clear. I'm just going to call it clear queues, basically. Clear queues, remove queues, whatever you want to call it. And that is going to be my function. So I need to go ahead and create that function outside of this for each. So I can create a function going, let's do the const clear queues. It's equal to my arrow function. So how I'm going to clear these queues is, as I've said earlier, is that I need to remove the first element inside of this array, right? Not the last element. And we know we can use a function called in array, a method called shift in order to do that. But what I want to do, I'm going to set an interval first to do this, just so we have like an animation thing going. So I'm going to say const interval. That's if I can spell interval. Const interval is equal to set interval. And I want this to run every half a second, because I've actually found that every second is, it takes a bit long. It doesn't look that nice, the animation, when you do it every second. So when I do every half a second, and then inside of this interval, what I want to do, I want to grab that array, that queues array, and then I'm going to do a shift element, which removes the first element inside of that array. And that's basically it. But before removing the element from this array, I need to also remove what I've added up here, which is the CSS class and also the number, the text. So let's go ahead and do that. So I can go and do queues, and because I know that we're working with the first element in the array, I can just do 0. So the first one in there, I can do class list dot remove, and what I'm removing is the class called selected. And I can do the same thing, same queue, first one in this array dot inner HTML, this reset to blank, and now I remove it from the array, right? We can even go as far as to do an if statement to check if this is not 0. So we can even do this so that we don't get an error saying position 0 undefined class list, because there's nothing in there, it's an empty array. So let's do that. Let's do if queues dot length is not equal to 0, and then we can go ahead and do all of this, right? Else which means if queue dot length is 0, we want to stop this interval. We want to stop this interval from running. I can actually say clear interval, and I'll just pass through interval in there. That's it. That's basically it. So this is just, the intervals is going to handle our animation of removing the stuff. What I want to do is make sure this doesn't get caught in an infinite loop where it will go over and over and over trying to do this. So this is where this if else statement comes in. So once the array reaches 0, and then it will just going to clear the interval. So let's go ahead and save this and see this in action. So if I've done everything right, we should see all of those pop back out in the order that I've added them. And now if you follow this tutorial, you have successfully created a first in first out stack using queues with JavaScript.